Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Maxace Perseus, a very premium knife with kind of a shocking price tag, especially when you consider all of the different options. I will link this knife down in the description so that you guys can check it out if you want to. Let's go ahead and get a measurement because there's a lot of details here that I really want to share with you guys. Overall length of the Maxace Perseus is coming in at about 7.7, 7.6, it's not quite 7 3/4. The blade length is coming in at about 3 1/4, and your cutting edge is also coming in at about 3 1/4. I wanted to show off here, one of the details is that incredibly premium, high polished, it's like a hand rub satin but with an extra polish on it. This is really worth pointing out because typically what we see for satin finishes is your basic machine satin. And then what I've come to learn recently, well, I mean, it honestly should have been obvious. I don't know why it took so long for me to like put this together, but a belt satin finish obviously has a lot more effort in it than a machine satin finish. So that's going to be a higher cost finish. Doesn't necessarily look like anything spectacular. Depends on, it depends on a bunch of different factors, but those are the two that we typically see. That's my point. The nicer finishes tend to come from the hand rub satin when we're still staying in the satin category. We see a lot of this sort of horizontal here, but this has a much higher polish than what we normally see. This is really, really beautiful. And it's worth pointing out because it is definitely different than a lot of the hand rub satin finishes that we see on Maxace knives and other competitors. Really, really cool. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons here real quick. Up against the, what do we usually start with? Oh my goodness. The Demco 80 20.5 and the Cold Steel 80 10. Any custom skills you find in this section can be found down in the description under original Goat and others. But this guy is similar in overall length to the 80 20.5, but it has way more cutting edge, obviously much smaller than something like the 80 10. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Close to the size of the Para 3, but obviously totally different shape and way more cutting edge again. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca, which is tucked away for some reason. Again, about the size as the Hogue Deca. How's the action? If you've never handled a Maxace knife, they are made in China, but this is one of, I would say Maxace has some of the best. It's not a great lead-in, is it? Maxace has some of the most precision production execution on the market. Now, this is always hard for people who either don't ever give Chinese knives a chance or have like disappeared from the knife world for 10 to 15 years and then come back. If you're just coming back, welcome. Some of the Chinese OEMs make some of the most precision knives on earth. This is factually true. But obviously there's a lot of different elements to consider, especially at this price point. When we're talking about, let's isolate it to that. When we're talking about this price point, it's incredibly hard for any other country of origin to match specifically OEMs like Maxace and Riot. You could throw Reich in there. Their complexity or their potential for complexity and their overall execution is just absolutely ridiculous. And this knife is no exception. The overall fit and finish is perfect, right? The only room for error is just in design, right? So you could obviously have a design that has like double clutch or not, a fantastic detent relative to the flipper tab and all of that. But when I'm talking about the finish work on the blade, bevels being even, seating of the hardware, scales having, completed and finished and rounded edges, things like that. Execution is perfect. On top of that, there is no double clutch, which is nice. It does get close. I think there's actually a slight ramp. There is. Right here, the detent ball is engaging right there, and then there's a really subtle ramp right there. But before it actually hits that ramp, actually, by the time the flipper tab meets your thumb right here, if you disengage it with one hand, that detent ball is up on the face of the blade, and it does not take much encouragement to get it to fall shut. It is incredibly smooth, really, really nice, and the detent off the flipper tab is good. I'd call it about medium, is nice and clicky, and your access to the lock bar, not cut lower on the show side, but there is a nice little chop out right there, making it pretty easy to disengage. But yeah, this is more of a light switch than it is a push button, but you definitely can push button it if you want to. Pretty satisfying. Not my favorite flipper of all time, definitely, but more than satisfying enough for what it is, right? You've only got one means of deployment, and it does that very, very well. Let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is a little on the thicker side versus the Para 3. Not insanely thick, but it is contoured, which is definitely worth pointing out. An element of comfort, I think, that's worth the trade-off in thickness. Let's go ahead and get the PM2 up here. This is a very easy object to carry. It feels very similar to, I would say, the average pocket knife, right? Lengthwise, it's only going to be slightly longer than the Para 3, nowhere near as tall, substantially smaller than the PM2. Should be a little heavier though, considering we are looking at full titanium. So on that note, what are we looking at for materials? We actually have red fat carbon on this guy. They also make a blue fat carbon version. They also make a Mokume Gain version, and they make a Damascus version. You would think that the price would go up exponentially. Not really. It's pretty impressive, but we'll talk about that here in a second. The blade steel is MagnaCut. The MagnaCut on this knife is hardened between 61 and 62, which we need to talk about for a second there. The gentleman who created MagnaCut is Laren Thomas. Laren Thomas's his own guidelines for where to harden this stuff lies, I think, between 60 and 64. That's a massive range. Obviously, I mean, my guess is the lower range is probably better optimized if you're going to make a fixed blade out of it. On a pocket knife that's not supposed to be used the same way as a fixed blade, especially at this geometry, you're going to gain more benefit hardening it a little higher. Now, if you're newer, you're going to hear, members of the community screaming, 60, 61, 62 is too low for MagnaCut, or you're going to hear some people who are just using the word improperly. They're going to say soft. And so you get people parroting that without really understanding what they're saying. 61 to 62 MagnaCut on a pocket knife is underwhelming, but it is not soft. The community, including myself, would prefer to see MagnaCut on a pocket knife at this geometry, given what you're going to use it for, at about 63 to 64. So 61 to 62 I don't think is bad, but it's a lot like getting M390 at 60. It's okay, but it could be better, right? For sure. So Maxace, consider for your folding, if you want to make fixed blades out of MagnaCut, sure, 60, 61, 62, probably, that'll be fine. But I feel like the best performance that you can get out of MagnaCut when you're, in the context of a pocket knife at this geometry, what you're going to use it for, which is continuous cutting, light to medium duty, you probably want to hit it 63 to 64. So yeah, 61 to 62, are you carrying around a piece of butter on a stick? Is it soft? No. Don't listen to people who say that. It's just not perfectly optimized, generally speaking, in the eyes of the community, right? So, but it's still just fine. Just wanted to point that out to give my 2 cents on that. But let's go ahead and weigh it. So we've got MagnaCut, we've got fat carbon, or magma fat carbon, titanium. This looks like a zirconium pivot. I can't find any confirmation that that's actually what it is. It could just be a polished black pivot. Or it actually could be zirconium. It wouldn't be the first time that they've done that. They did it on the Maxace Dragon, so it definitely would not surprise me. Either way, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference here. Then we have titanium for the backspacer and titanium for the pocket clip. This specific version weighs 4.5 ounces, which is probably heavier than some people would have expected, but definitely not incredibly heavy in terms of a pocket knife. The balance is actually not bad at all because there's a lot of blade here evening things out. So there you go. Your Damascus versions and your Mokume Gain versions are going to weigh more because those inlays weigh more than carbon fiber. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I'm going to guess that's a T8. You can also find these in the pinned comment if you can't find the description. Yeah, T8. We have a T8 screw back here. And then we have T8 on this side. And I'm probably T6. No, there's a T8 screw in there for the hidden pocket clip screw. So that's nice. T8 across the board, minimal hardware. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. There's my calipers. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness, and then we will get into the meat and potatoes here. So blade stock thickness, I'm going to guess that's about 135 to 145. That is even thicker, 155. Maxace has an odd fascination with like ZT, like 2014 to 2017 ZT thickness. But okay. So anyways, this is a very traditional profile, right? It probably looks like something you're familiar with. You might be looking at this and thinking that looks like the this or that looks like the that. And the answer is it does, without even knowing what you're referencing. You're right, it does. That's because we have a very classic knife handle profile and an even more classic knife blade profile. Drop point, spear point, whatever you want to call that, right? Very classic knife lines. We have contouring, we have a nice inlay, beautiful transition between the titanium and the fat carbon. We have a beautifully polished magnet cut blade. I mean, this is really, really nice stuff. Not typically what you can expect from a, Chinese knife company, producing knives like this, contoured. Like there's plenty of competition out there, but a lot of the competition would produce the exact same thing and charge you between $280 and $325 for it. And I am laser accurate when I say that. Maxace tends to be lower when they're making this type of stuff. And that's what's really impressive because it is legitimately magnet cut. I mean, all these materials are legitimate. So even though it is a Chinese product, the actual competition creating the exact same thing at their lowest price is still quite a bit higher than Maxace. And rest assured, anybody trying to make exactly this in the United States, I mean, exactly this. Fat carbon, contoured titanium, polished magnet cut blade, even without the optimal heat treat, you are looking at a $500, $600 knife all day. It's just not possible to do something like this in the United States. So mainly talking about these elements for the new people who are showing up to this channel from TikTok or YouTube Shorts or wherever, right? Because this has got to be confusing. But yeah, apples to apples, right? Made in the United States is going to be substantially higher when you're actually working with these exact materials and the exact finish. But it's really impressive that they're able to get it down here. Now, on the knife itself, the comfort here is actually pretty good. I really like that they kept this area right here. A lot of companies, they give you this comfort zone right here, and then when it comes to the flipper tab, they give you a hard 90-degree angle, and that is so bad. This area has a nice continued curvature, so this is comfortable. All the way up behind the flipper tab, really, really comfortable. You're not that far off from the edge, and there's nothing in the cutting path, so you can really make use of that. The contouring is really nice, and it's chamfered at the edges. The pocket clip is also contoured or radiused on top, and it's knocked down at the bill. It's a little longer than I'd like it to be, but it's not bad. What I really don't like is the elongated ramp. That doesn't need to be so long, and it creates kind of a pinch zone when you're mashing it into your pocket seam. That's what I noticed in and out of the pocket, and that's typical of bills like this. But you have to fight it a little bit. Not bad. It's not a deal breaker. It's just something you should be aware of. But in terms of comfort, ergonomic comfort, yeah, it's honestly really, really nice. And with this not being quite an 8-inch knife, I kind of expected my pinky to be slipping off the edge. I wear an XL glove, so if you wear a 2XL or bigger, you're definitely going to be sliding off the edge here. But if your hands are my size or smaller, pretty comfortable, full grip on this. The jimping ends right here. That's just the end of the jimping. The jimping is not super functional as it is. But, to accomplish this blade shape, I don't know. I kind of wish they just had continued, like, just it straight off the spine, like jimping out to the swedge, but they decided to do it this way. That's fine. If you're going to add jimping here, like this is almost useless. It needs to be deeper so that you're actually getting traction, because I'm not getting much there. Yeah, just a little minor complaint. I do like that they left the show side sterile. I don't love that it has to say DM47 and MagnaCut super big. Like, if that has to be on there, make it smaller. I do appreciate that they're putting their logo on the clip now, or at least on this model. I think that's nice, but this is just, why? You know, this is so beautiful, right? I love the way that the front of this looks. It's really nice. Maxace is known for making wild and crazy off-the-wall stuff, and this is one of their more like practical, straightforward, traditional knife or modern tactical knife designs, however you want to label that. But it's proof that they can make a high-quality functional tool when they want to, and they simply choose to be crazy most of the time, or at least half of the time. But the blade, like I said, classic drop point or spear point, or whatever you want to call that. Flat that carries out about 80% the length of the blade, big swedge, nice tip. Because of where the flat is and because of what they were trying to accomplish with the blade here and the blade stock thickness, you end up with an edge that's pretty darn thick. So the cutting geometry is not really aiding this knife much, and the heat treat on the MagnaCut is also not going to be aiding this knife much. You can definitely cut with this. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a terrible, slicer. But, if you're real nitpicky about your cutting geometry and stuff like that, then this knife isn't going to impress you. But the factory edge and the geometry are still thin enough to get a reasonable slice in something like paper. Obviously, you're going to fight it a little more if you're cutting thicker materials, cardboard, rubber, styrofoam, things like that. But it's fine. The edge is even. The final edge bevel is even all the way out to the tip. Looks really, really good. Little sharpening tool back there. In some way, shape, or form, whenever I talk about the edge in this area here, somebody complains about the plunge lock. I just want to point that out. Almost every knife that I've reviewed for the last 2 years, somebody says it's a terrible, like the final plunge grind is terrible. I find that an interesting thing. I kind of have what I like to call a window washer's perspective, because this channel literally gets over 100,000 comments a year. Millions and millions of views a year, but I get over 100,000 comments. And I just find it funny that the wide range of what's considered to be bad or good, like a small percentage of people are probably right, and any large population of people complaining about certain things. But considering the wide variety of knives that I review in the totally different blade shapes and geometries, right, where the plunge grind is, it's just funny that across the board, somebody always considers it bad. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how particular you are, right? I just thought that was interesting, and that you guys would find that fun. I'm sure that you'll discuss that further in the comment section. But anyways, don't expect this to be an absolute laser beam. I don't think that they really, wanted that to be the case. If you want, something that's got better cutting geometry, I think that, in terms of a Maxace knife, I think the Black Mirror is probably a little better. There's definitely some other knives, but they were trying to accomplish a specific aesthetic here with the blade, and they did that. It's just that the end result is that the cutting edge is a little thick, and the heat treat is a little underwhelming considering the blade steel they used. Still perfectly fine for general EDC, right? Unless you are a professional slicer of objects, and every task that you do, you measure, right, in terms of performance and quality, you probably won't notice that much. If you're considering picking this up, you're probably just considering picking it up for the really great execution that Maxace generally brings to the table, and in this case, this particular form. Anyways, you have a pretty general backspacer. It's titanium. It's got a little bit of a gear pattern there, raised slightly above the frame. It's fine. No lanyard hole, but pretty much nobody cares anymore. Slightly gray. This is not zirconium. It's just like a slightly more, like a darker finish on the tie versus the surrounding titanium. I do like that they put an inlay on both sides. I think that's really great. It is riding on a smooth surface, so you won't have to worry about your pants being frayed up too much. It does have a steel lock bar insert. It's just all on the inside. Let me see if I can actually show that to you guys. The threads finish before the exterior of the titanium, so you just don't see them. It's more than enough to hold it in there, but it's definitely got a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. It also has garaged stops, meaning you can kind of see the stop pins on the blade are sort of, that's what we call it, garage. Like you can see them, but then they slide underneath there. And that's great. nice lockup solidity without sacrificing, there's no blade play or anything without sacrificing like ease of centering or anything like that because the blade is really centered. So you get a nice, strong, solid lockup and good action. That's what I guess I should have said. Strong lockup without sacrificing action or anything like that. A little bit better solidity versus a single point of contact, but it probably doesn't matter that much. I just notice, generally speaking, with knives like that, when you have a stop on either side, it tends to be a little better than a single stop pin. Anyways, runs on bearings, you probably knew that. Very smooth. We have no blade play up, down, left to right, no lock stick, no pivot lash, consistent all the way down, nice detent, perfect centering, and no detent lash. So, what is the price on this knife? $228. Now, I'd have been really happy had they hit that $63.64 mark. Maxace, for one reason or another, just like every other company who is not willing to get it as high as the community wants, it is still technically just an opinion. It's just a very widely shared opinion by the community that MagnaCut, specifically on pocket knives, in the general geometry range that you expect a folding knife blade to be like an EDC pocket knife, it's a widely shared opinion that it should be heat treated between 63 and 64, at least 62 to 64, right? Most people buying these types of knives are going to care. So I think Maxace would be doing a favor to the community to get it up higher, right? They may disagree for one reason or another, but the community, generally speaking, especially their buying audience, I think would thank them and actually celebrate them, as we have with other companies who have gotten that Rockwell hardness up that high for MagnaCut. I think they would be celebrated for that. So Maxace, you really should consider getting that up a little bit higher. This is a great range for M390. So if you could get your M390 between at least 60 and 62, consistently, then that'd be great. But MagnaCut, a little bit higher, right? I'd have been real blown away at $228, considering it is MagnaCut, which is expensive. This is not like Chinese MagnaCut. No, it's MagnaCut, like bought from Crucible, authentic MagnaCut. They have a beautiful finish on the blade, potentially a zirconium pivot, which doesn't really matter all that much. Nice fat carbon inlay, right? Just a really beautiful fit and finish all the way around with some details that you won't normally see at this price point, even with it being a Chinese knife. That's really great. But also for people who care, the Mokame Gain version is like $305, and the Timascus version is like $350. That's pretty excellent, even without the heat treat being, perfectly optimized. This is a pretty impressive knife all the way around. Honestly, this is pretty recommendable. It's a great tool. It looks nice. The finish on it is great. I mean, dollar for dollar, like it's pretty impressive. I really like this. So if you're shopping in this territory, obviously you don't need to spend $228 to get a good knife. But if you want good utility and also something that's really, really nice and has all of those premium finishes, this isn't a bad way to spend $228 at all, right? If you're dropping in from TikTok, yeah, you can get a good knife for like $50. That's fine. But, utility is common. Good utility is common. It is not a mystery, which is the opposite of what many companies would have you believe. No, function and utility, that equation has been figured out. It's very easy to determine that or get that for, hardly any money. But the extra design elements, the things that draw in enthusiasts, right? The extra effort, the incredible tolerances, the little teeny tiny things, the attention to detail, all of that stuff. If you want that stuff on top of utility, then you're going to pay for it for sure. But Maxace is delivering at $228 for sure. So in this territory, yes, this knife is definitely recommendable. That's going to be it today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.